beautiful line from none other than, it was a Penn from Penn and Teller who talked about his experience of that, that somebody, he's an atheist, but somebody shared the faith with him. And he asked he was so struck by it, about how loving and honest, and the guy maintained eye contact, he kept saying, but he said, how much you have to hate somebody not to share what you truly believe with them. Wow. And so Dan Joy makes the same argument, in terms of what we bring to our art, whether it be music or poetry or literature, that worldview has something to offer people, whether it be hope or doctrine, the saving truths of the faith, or even just a vision of man that's worthy of us.
Yeah.
I think Flannery O'Connor writes some of the most Catholic and beautiful stories ever without ever mentioning the gospel. Right? At that same event with Dan Joy, I gave a paper on the Southern grotesque tradition, specifically Flannery O'Connor and Parker's Back, one of my favorite stories, about the use of angst in literature, right? Literature as a way of bringing you right to the precipice of hope and leaving you there. Essentially saying, wouldn't it be better if this were true? With the hope that is true, right? It sort of brings you right up to the mountains. You either have to run away or confront the truth of how things ought to be. And so Dan Joy points out so beautifully, like this is the role of really religiously inspired art. And as Catholics and as Christians, we have so much in our heritage to do that. And unfortunately, we've abandoned it.
Yeah. And the very fact that you say the phrase Catholic art or Christian music or Catholic fiction, you could go on and on, all these different sort of phrases that we now take for granted that in some cases are entire industries unto themselves now. That is, I think, a very, very sad state of affairs when really what I was beginning to suspect and sort of have deep hunches about, Dan Joy put into words for me very eloquently 7 years ago, which is that all truly human art is Catholic art. Even if you're not Catholic and you're tapping into it, right? You're tapping into these universal principles of what we would maybe call the art of being human, what it really means to be fully human and fully alive. This incredible mystery that is redemptive suffering, that is seeing the physical world as not only not evil, but in fact sacramental, charged with God's grandeur, So I think it's really amazing when you see these sort of prophets kind of rise up out of nowhere. For me, this was a rising up out of nowhere. I didn't realize the history or the career, of Dana Joy up until this point. But I have to say it's affected my approach to Lovegood, certainly ever since. I'd say it's also just it's affected my approach to even how I not only consume music, books, and art, but maybe specifically how I want to accompany musicians, artists, and authors as well. Because I think sometimes we fall into this trap of thinking, well, to call this Christian, we've got to make sure we say the name of Christ, a certain number of times, per minute. We've got to only call it Catholic art, for example, if it's sacred and therefore dealing with, sacred images. And I think one of the lines that we're constantly trying to ride with Lovegood is that actually the sacred and the secular sort of come together with a Catholic imagination. And suddenly everything can become a veil behind which you see the glory of God. How exciting. What an adventurous and romantic and beautiful way to live.